Welcome to the Sunday League podcast, brought to you as part of our UK NFL Fantasy Football Network. I'm Samit Paul, and as always, I'm joined by TSL's co-host, co-creator and co-commish, Jack Cowlin. Jack, how's it going, my man?
Yeah, all good, buddy, all good. Drafts are underway, so it's all exciting. I kind of forgot the daily updates. Sort of, you've got to be on it, isn't it? It's sort of messages, all of a sudden notifications, and all the rest of it are all going off. But it's exciting times, and yeah, all good.
Yes, but certainly is. So in today's pod, we are continuing our top 15 rankings list for the upcoming fantasy season. Having covered the running backs and wide receivers already, we are rolling on to the tight ends this week. We will also switch our attention to the NFC after going through the AFC last week, as we pick out one fantasy target to consider from each team beyond who is touted as the main star. And with the help of our TSL crew, we'll cast our eyes over the early rounds of the North and South Leagues in our fantasy network as their drafts got underway this past weekend as well. So Jack, let's start with a look back at those drafts to kick things off and discuss where there were any notable picks or strategies that emerged from our members in the North and South Leagues. You are, of course, competing in the South, so let's start there. My mind was absolutely blown watching these picks roll in, because thankfully you were on hand to explain a bit more to me, because I'm a newbie in that sense. I'm used to redrafts rather than Dynasty, but I was just sitting there, what I perceived as madness, just watching it all roll in. 12 quarterbacks off the board within the first 18 picks. Puka Nacua going 8th overall. The list of available players going into the third round was insane. Not as insane as Trevor Lawrence going 4th overall, but listen, we're here, we watch, and we don't judge, so it's fine. Incidentally, he went 10th in the North League as well. But what did you make of the early rounds of your draft, and how happy are you? Obviously, you went Drake May up top with the 1.3 pick. You added Devon Achane, Malik Neighbors, and Nico Collins to your roster after that. What did you make of the draft, and how happy are you with it?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. As I said, I could only imagine your little brain, because it's two quarterback league that we do as well in the Superflex. That again, when people were drafting two quarterbacks with their first two picks, it just looks so different to a redraft, doesn't it? And sort of a traditional sort of format, sort of setup and things. So no, it was crazy. I think Josh Allen going number one. I think, did he go number one in the North as well? Was he first in both of ours?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so that one I expected, and Robinson to follow shortly thereafter. So it sort of started. I was deliberating, who to go with, but I ultimately fell on May. I just think there's such long-term value in him that I was just like, yeah, let's grab him with number 3. And then, Warren, who's new to it all as well. I know him; he's local to me, but he's new to all of this as well. So he went for Trevor Lawrence, and that was a shocker off the bat. Again, just Trevor Lawrence, he just wasn't really on my radar as certainly being a first round pick. But again, the fact he went number 10 in the North League, maybe there's more value there. But I think I was certainly expecting sort of Lamar Jackson to be sort of the next quarterback off the list. And so it's interesting on that side of things. But yeah, the thing when lots of people are taking the double quarterbacks, it does then open up the third and fourth rounds. That there's still plenty of people on the board, as it were. So no, I was really happy. I went for Achane with my second pick. I had to get a Dolphin in there, and it was one of those. I think I was messaging you. Sort of, there was probably, I don't know if I can say better players, but there was maybe other names there that you'd maybe lean to more regularly. But I was really delighted to get with him, and that gives me something to really get behind for this year. And then Neighbors in the third. I was contemplating a draft up with a guy Dan in our league who was sort of offering his pick at 3 or 4 picks early, and I was like, Hampton was still on the board, and I was like, I really want one of Hampton on Neighbors. Do I risk it? Do I go up? But thankfully I didn't move up, but I managed to grab Neighbors, which I'm really happy with. And then Nico Collins, again, sometimes it's difficult to especially with Dynasty, you're sometimes looking so much at the age profiles, and you're so much thinking about who's the next big thing. Sometimes when there's sort of a clear and obvious person who's again still sort of prime age, is staring you in the face, you've just got to do it. And I've had Nico Collins in a few leagues, and so I was really pleased with him. But no, as I say, the amount of callbacks that came off ours definitely made it interesting, exciting. Baz, who's a Chiefs fan, he went for Kenneth Walker with his second round pick to pair with Jahmyr Gibbs, and that was quite interesting because I don't think anybody else would really have Walker up at that level. I think he's much more a third, potentially fourth round pick. So again, that left a few people on the boards. And then I was waiting for the wide receiver run, really, because the first 2 rounds we had JSN, Jamar Chase, and Puka all go, what must have been like 6, 7, 8 sort of territory. But then there wasn't a wide receiver drafted then for 2 rounds. We do a 3-round reversal, and then Amon-Ra came off, Jefferson came off, and then we had the sort of the wide receiver run, starting with London, Lamb went, Neighbours, Egbuka, which was a really exciting one from Katie. She's got Robinson, Bowers, and Egbuka as her top 3 picks, followed by AJ Brown, which was quite an exciting sort of roster, quite a fun roster, and then McMillan as well. So it was interesting. Definitely tried to hold my nerve and not get swayed too much, as I say, to kind of follow the 2 quarterback strategy. I think I've got in my mind what I want to do with that position. But yeah, it was interesting, and as I said, I could just imagine you looking at it, kind of thinking, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it was just from my vantage point with my inexperience in this realm, it was just wild watching it unfold. But like I said, the super flex element, that kind of the back-to-back quarterbacks picks and stuff, the 3rd-round reversal was in play. So then that all I started to fix the jigsaw up, and it all started to make sense to me in my mind. But just a couple of questions for you firstly then. So in terms of, you obviously went Drake May up top. You weren't put off at all, by the talk surrounding the Patriots schedule last season and whether or not May in this offense is really as good as everyone says and all that, and how much of a factor was the AJ Brown potential arrival, the expected arrival, in your decision to take him?
No, I think May had a really good rookie year. He wasn't the sort of standout in the class, but he had a really good first year, and then he followed that up with an almost MVP year. I genuinely think we're looking at a top 5 quarterback in the league. Like, I think he's in and around that sort of territory. I think we've had, Jackson, Allen, Burrows, obviously Mahomes and Herbert have sort of been the top 5 for a few years now. That's sort of been the sort of, kind of, I guess, sort of the traditional sort of big 5, as it were. But I really think May, for me, to have that good a start of your career, have the attributes that he's got, being a team that is evolving and competing, for me, I just think, I really feel as though he's sort of next on throne, as it were, in terms of kind of really kind of cemented himself as a sort of a regular MVP contestant. So, and I really like the way he plays. I really like him. I really like his character. I really like the way he plays. So no, he was always sort of, after Allen, he was always second on my board. So as soon as Allen went, again, just thinking about how else I want to play my draft, I thought he was the man to go to.
And then Lawrence, obviously, like I said, went 4th in the South, 10th in the North. I was actually listening to the latest Fantasy Footballers pod, and they were actually really talking him up, just in terms of his dynasty, especially just given his age, the ceiling, the longevity of being able to perform at a top level for dynasty purposes. Do you buy into all of that? And I know you mentioned Lamar Jackson and others as well, probably should have potentially gone ahead, but there is obviously a massive upside with Lawrence as well, going that high in the drafts.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's kind of got that, him and Burrow were always sort of, I guess, they competed in the college final, didn't they, against each other? They've always sort of been held in sort of similar regard, but Lawrence has just never potentially done it. And going into last season, everyone kind of forgets that people were like, he might, that if he doesn't have a big year, they might cut him or they might replace him. That was a real serious sort of conversation going into last year. And he had a good year, certainly second half of the season, when Jag sort of pulled it all together. And he's kind of got both threats. He's obviously, good in the air and such, and he has got some running threat and such. But for me, he just wasn't really on my radar to be ahead of them. I would certainly have him more with your Herberts and potentially sort of Bo Nix and I don't know, maybe even your sort of Brock Purdy's, those sort of people. That's where I pictured him sort of going and such. As I sort of say, I certainly thought Jackson, Daniels, Jalen Hurts, in my mind, we're all going to be ahead of him. So it was really interesting to see him go so high. So we'll see how that plays out.
Well, as my fellow commish, I'm glad to see you start strong. Like you said, I think there's a number of balanced rosters in your league, which is very intriguing. And I think even we previously discussed it on the very first pod, perhaps, but like what it actually even is a winning strategy in fantasy football.
Yeah.
It's no guaranteed thing. So everyone's got their route, and I wish everyone well. Anything else from the south caught your eye, or should we move on to the north?
No, I think that's it. I think it was it's been fairly steady going. I don't think there's been any sort of huge shockers or anything like that. I think, Jeremiah Love going ahead of the likes of Omar and Hampton and such, I think makes sense. Obviously, given all the talk and potentially the role he's going to have there. But no, I think a lot of it sort of, as I said, it's sort of played out. Maybe not in the same round, but I think sort of maybe round 3 looks like what I envisioned round 2 looked like. It was interesting. Brock Bowers going as the first tight end. I think people are going to buy in heavy on him, which is very valid and such. But no, I think otherwise it's been fairly standard.
Okay, so up north, these guys were not messing about. They sped through to the end of the 4th round in just a couple of days. As we've mentioned, Josh Allen, Drake May were the first to go in this one. May obviously a popular pick after you selected him 3rd as well. And then this followed a more orthodox route, I guess, with a mix of running backs and wide receivers going in the 1st round. A couple of tight ends early in the 2nd with Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. Jeremiah Love at 2.4. Carnell Tate went 4.4. And then Myles Garrett popped up at 4.6. So in complete contrast, there are actually a couple of teams in this league that didn't even have a quarterback by the end of the 4th round. Plenty of trades happening as well. So hats off to our boys in the north. Very active, very eager to get through their draft. What did you make of the North draft and sort of the difference between that and the South?
Well, them boys quick. That's the first thing. They were keen to get their picks in, and so we're doing a slow draft, 8-hour slow draft, certainly for the first half of the drafts and stuff. And yeah, the South, we were sort of potting around a day and all the rest of it. Whilst these boys, I think they actually took it as competition to make sure that they race ahead of the South, as it were. So it was really active, as you said, loads of big trades that, again, as commissioners, we're trying to make sure that there's nothing going on there. And sometimes there's 4 or 5 picks involved and things, and you're like, right, is this all legit and stuff? So no, that's been really great to see. But yeah, I think there's probably resembles a little bit more of what you think a big board would look like potentially. Again, I don't think there was any major shocks or anything, but I think it was really interesting. It's probably more the trades and the movements and things. And as you sort of say, it's interesting that there's teams that didn't have quarterbacks at the end of the 4th, but looking here at Lewis's, he's ended up with Love and Mendoza, which like that's not, there's still a fairly strong quarterback room there, especially then because he's got Gibbs and Lamb and Brown and Tate as such as his other options. So it's interesting how different it makes. Just again, the sort of when they are picked, who then becomes available in the later rounds and things. So I think there's probably people are kind of going against a little bit more of their average draft position than maybe the South.
All you guys in the South need to pull your finger out because they're near towards the end of the 7th round, and you guys are still in the 5th. So get your skates on, everyone.
Yeah. Well, Matt was quite quick to lay down the authority of not tagging on the clock because people have their notifications on. But we've had to message in a few times in the group, and I think people have forgot that they're on the board and things like that. And it's tough, especially because I'm on the turn as the 3rd pick. That once I make one pick, I really want to make the other one as quick as possible because in my head I'm like, right, this is how I want this to play out, and I want to know when it comes to fruition. But again, slow drafts are there for a reason. People could take their time, consider it a little bit more, and come up with some pretty wild picks after 8 hours.
Well, good luck to everyone in those 2 leagues. And having held a fresh vote across our other 3 leagues, with many keen to get the drafts moved forward, we'll see how those play out from Sunday onwards in the Midlands and our 2 UK-wide leagues. I did push for a revote on the 3rd round reversal in the Midlands, but I don't think it's going to pass. So it would suit me, but yeah, it's not going to happen. So we'll see how those pan out. Anything else on the North, Jack, or shall we move on to our next segment?
No, I think it's I just love, as I said, stuff with the draft and sort of the trades and things like that. I just love it because it's sort of like, are people questioning what they've done early, or if people, are they sort of changing tactic, or is it just movement for the sake of movement? I think we had one today or so where it was the first time in 2027 a 1st round pick went, and I think it was in return for Breece Hall. And I'm trying to think who it was. It was Brees Hall, maybe Bo Nix have gone, plus a couple picks for a 2027 first, and then some picks. And I was really intrigued by that because I was like, well, have they ended up with players they didn't want, and that's why they've traded, or was it a case an offer came in that was too good? So it'll be really interesting when we debrief with everyone sort of at the end, sort of what thinking is. And I know we're going to sort of share some thoughts and get some people on to sort of talk about strategies and things like that. But it was that was interesting to see.
We'll definitely get some guests on, some reaction and a bit more detail on those once everything's wrapped up, so that'll be good. So in our next segment, we are choosing our top 15 tight ends for the 2026 fantasy season. And for reference, I will roll through the rankings from last season in fives, and then we'll share how we think it will look this time round. As I've mentioned previously, and we've mentioned in this podcast, we are in dynasty leagues in our network with half PPR scoring and tight end premium. But this will hopefully be useful regardless of your format if you're listening and you're using a different one. If you did miss it, we covered running backs and wide receivers in previous pods, so go back and check those out if you'd like to hear more on those positions. So last season, we saw Trey McBride finish top of the pile. Kyle Pitts followed in second, and Travis Kelce, Dallas Goedert, and Tyler Warren completed the top five. So I don't know about you, but I found this one got trickier the deeper I got into the list. But as far as the top five goes, I guess, it wasn't too difficult, I didn't think. So I'll give you my five first and then let me know your thoughts. So I went Brock Bowers in first place, as I think the Raiders just look a much more sound operation, having added exciting pieces both in terms of the coaching staff and also talent on the roster. I think it's a lot settled and there's a bit more direction to it. And I think inevitably Bowers will obviously benefit from that. Obviously, a big question mark is that if he can stay healthy, that's a big thing as well. Trey McBride was a star last season. As I said, he finished top of the rankings. I expect him to shine again this year, but just because of the upturn with Bowers, he moves down one into the number 2 spot for me. And then those two are followed by Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, and then Harold Fannin Jr. to complete my top 5. I think all 3 of those guys are fantasy studs, or at least have the potential to go on and be long-term fantasy studs, and I'd be comfortable landing any of them. So that's my top 5, Jack. Who made your top 5 and why?
Yeah, no, as you sort of say, it's interesting, especially in our league, which is tight end premium. Tight ends are, they're a real weapon. And if you can get one of those big scorers, it can make a difference. I completely agree. Almost a top 10 would have probably done. I think you sort of 10 to 20 kind of starts to get where they all can kind of score quite similar and such. But I kept McBride at number 1. He was so far ahead of the class last year in terms of fantasy points scored. I just think I think he's the best tight end in the league. I don't really see anything that's changed that will stop him being their key weapon in the aerial game and such. So I just think he'll continue his sort of superstar run. I genuinely think he's on such a trajectory to be an all-time great. So I kept McBride ahead. I think until proven otherwise, I think he's the man to catch. So him first. I have got Bowers in at second. Just mirroring what you're sort of saying, really, from an offensive point of view. Hopefully better quarterbacks, obviously better coaching. You just should see him kind of get back to, I guess, what everyone was expecting coming out of year 1 for him. I had Warren number 3. Yeah, just brilliant rookie. Again, he showed himself as a big-time weapon. And then Loveland number 4. Those two were obviously the big dilemma last year, who to go for. And I think ultimately, if you took either of them in a dynasty, you're happy with whichever you got. Almost the opposite to Warren. Sort of Loveland, I feel, finished the season stronger. Maybe took a little bit longer to get going, whilst Warren started really hot and then maybe cooled off as the Colts did. I just find it quite tricky to pick on them. I just think with the Bears, maybe have more weapons. So that's probably where my thinking came from there, that maybe Loveland's might be spread around a little bit. And number 5, I was different, actually. I went for Kittle, who appreciate there's a bit of an injury concern in terms of how he's going to come into the year. It's obviously not really an outside shout, given he's one of the best ever to do it. But I feel like he's owed, a 14, 15 game season, which he hasn't had for a couple of years. And if he does that, I just think he's going to deliver what everyone knows he's capable of. So, I actually bumped Kittle up into my top 5. Giving the vet some love.
Interesting. There's a big disparity between me and you on George Kittle. So
Really?
we'll get to that in a minute. But
Okay.
it's quite surprising for myself because I'm obviously quite high on him in the 49ers. So yeah, maybe I've put him down too low, but we'll discuss that in a minute. From 6th to 10th last season, we had Harold Fannin Jr., Hunter Henry, Jake Ferguson, Brock Bowers, and Juwan Johnson. Do you want to give me your 6th to 10th for 2026 first?
Yeah, so number 6, I went for Tucker Craft, actually, who
Nice.
was he was on a tear last year before the injury and such, and I think he might miss one or two to begin the year potentially, but I just feel like he'll score really well, especially given sort of the look of the Packers offense. Again, they're still maybe lacking a true superstar number one, and again they've made the way the wide receiver room works. I just think there was a lot there last year that he showed where it was like this guy is right at the top. So given that he might miss a few games, I put him in at number 6. Sam Laporta at number 7. Again, I know that you had him when he did really well for a few seasons, maybe cooled off a little bit, but I just think he's in an offense that can fire and will get his share. Harold Fannin Jr. I then had at 8, so I appreciate a little bit lower than you. Obviously, one of the stars of the rookie class last year. I think he'll lose some targets because of the wide receiver room. I think when we were talking about the rookies and things like that coming up the drafts and sort of I think last week in terms of who might be the second top scorer for Browns. I think there might be obviously a little bit more share going on, but he was really exciting. So had him at number 8. Pitts number 9. He finally delivered some numbers that made him relevant again. It's just really hard to know where to rate him, but after a good year last year, I wanted to keep him in the top 10. And then I had Dallas Goedert at 10. Again, it's one of those. There's lots of quite exciting young tight ends, but Goddard's one of those veterans that does deliver when he's on the field and such. So he just always gets his points, and I suspect that'll be the case. So yeah, Kraft 6, Laporta 7, Fannin Jr. 8, Pitts 9, and Goddard 10 for me.
So we are completely on the same page for 6 and 7. I've gone Tucker Craft in 6th. Echo all the reasons and sentiments you just said. He's absolutely flying last year before his injury. Interestingly, I saw a video circulating yesterday of him doing some running drills.
Okay.
So, like you say, he might miss maybe 1 or 2 games to start the season, but I just think they need him back. I think the talent they've let go on the offense, as you mentioned, in the offseason, I think there's a massive window of opportunity for him to come back in and be a big target for them on his return, but catch up in terms of scoring fantasy-wise, and I think he's a good shout to be in there for 6th. And then, again, like I said, I've got Sam Laporta 7th. Followed by Kyle Pitts, Kenyon Sadiq, and Oronde Gadsden rounding off my top 10. Now, I appreciate there's a bit of explaining here to do, so I'll try my best.
Yeah.
Lots of intrigue about Sadiq, and I just am quite confident that he'll find his feet with the Jets and deliver. I just think I know it's a young offense, there's a lot of talent there. It's potentially going to get shared around, but just dynasty-wise, I think Sadiq is one to look out for, could have a breakout year. And then Gadsden is obviously the troublesome one here because we'll mention it in more detail later, but David Njoku landing with the Chargers, so take some points and stuff off him. That'll be a problem for Gadsden. But flip side of that, will it be a good thing? Mike McDaniel will cook up some craziness for Justin Herbert and both tight ends flourish. I just thought I've just got a funny feeling that there'll be a strong season for Gadsden, regardless of Njoku turning up. But
he had that run, didn't he, last year, where everyone was like, "Oh, he's a player. He's a guy." Where I think he started showing up, and it wasn't consistent, but there was enough there. No, I like it. Yeah, it's quite ballsy.
Okay, so from 11 to 15 last season, we had Dalton Schultz, Colston Loveland, George Kittle, AJ Barner, and Colby Parkinson. Jack, do you want to hit us first with your next 5?
Yeah, so this was the stage where, again, I rewrote it a few times because, again, I sort of did it and then I was like, well, no, they'll definitely be in there or they won't. But ultimately, I've landed on Brenton Strange. I just think he's a really good all-round tight end. It gets his share. And yeah, I just think he's just a really solid player. And I think if he, again, can sort of be on the field a little bit more, I think he only played 12 games or so last year. So I think if he can, play 14, 15 or so, he should be in and around the top 15. So I had him at 11. Ferguson, again, just a really reliable option. He's obviously in one of the best scoring offenses in the league. And I like the point that we got last week, I think it was, or sort of yes, somebody mentioned it to me in terms of they liked Ferguson for the sort of red zone sort of targets and such, given the other weapons they've got. So Ferguson, I think, is 12. AJ Barner, is sort of those three again. They just feel to me that they're top 15 tight ends. They're sort of just steady Eddies, probably never going to be 1, 2, 3, but they're in and around this category. So I had those guys. I had Kenyon Sadiq at 14. I obviously had him as the Jets' second top scorer last week. So I've got to get him in there somewhere. Had a few pushbacks on it and such, but no, I do feel as though he's going to be a real weapon there. And then I had Kelsey at 15, who clearly age is really starting to become a factor, but he's going to get his touchdowns, and his relationship with Mahomes just makes me feel like he's going to be still relevant enough to crack this list. So I had Kelsey at 15. So yeah, I had Strange 11, Ferguson 12, Barner 13, Sadiq 14, and Kelsey 15.
All right, so I've flipped the first two. I've got Jake Ferguson 11th, Brenton Strange 12th. I've call it Giants bias, if you will. That's fine, but I've got Isaiah Likely 13th.
Yeah, he came to mind. He was there.
George Kittle 14th and AJ Barner 15th. So I guess for obvious reasons, I'm keen to see how Likely does, having joined Harbaugh in New York. I think just being free of being in the shadow of Mark Andrews in Baltimore, can he now really emerge as an elite tight end? Don't know about Neighbours, how long he's going to be out for. Darius Slayton is still injured at the moment. So is there a window of opportunity for him to get hot at the start of the season, link up with Jackson Dart and really build on that? Appreciate Kittle is aging and he's coming back from injury, but perhaps that's a bit of a reach on my part, as in he's too low on this list, but he's still one of the best in the business, so can't argue with him being a top 15 tight end. And AJ Barner could be another one to build on last season, just continues to be a favoured option for Sam Darnold along with JSN. And I think, just that unit just looks to ensure that last season wasn't as good as it's going to get from them and the Seahawks offense as a whole. So I think he's going to have another strong season.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with all of that. And it is tough because if you like Hunter Henry, he's just not a sexy name, is it? It's just one of those guys that you're like, who's Hunter Henry? How old is he now? And all the rest of it. But he does deliver. Again, he's a big point scorer. So he was one of those that I feel should be in the top 15, but I didn't want to put him in there because there's just other names and things. And then I guess for me, and Joker and Gadsden, I kept off because I just thought they might take off each other. And then probably the other one that really kind of Kincaid at the Bills. I'm very wary that the Bills offense could be completely different, not completely different, but it's going to have different facets and things like that. And there might be, people that they wanted to showcase more than they have and things. And I feel like Kincaid, he's got some drops in him and all the rest of it, but he's a player. And he's someone that I think could have a good year.
Any other interesting names you want to bring up, or is that our tight end list locked in?
Yeah, I think again, outside of sort of some of the other vets like Mark Andrews, it'll be interesting how he ages and things. I do like the Likely shout. As I said, I did contemplate. I really liked him. I think it was season before last. I was like, he is just waiting to get out of the shadow of Mark Andrews and things. But again, I think ultimately I fell on. I want to see it before I kind of predict it. And then maybe Chig over at Tennessee, and you got sort of. Again, there's a few other people, but no, I'm fairly content with who we've covered.
All right, then. So we are moving on to our third segment of this pod. And myself and Jack have gone around the NFC this week and picked out a player who will emerge as the second top scorer in fantasy, beyond who many would consider the main attraction on their respective teams, to try and give everyone a bit of help when it comes to looking at the depth charts and going beyond just the star names. We also got our TSL crew again to get involved on this. They've made their picks from each team to give us additional insights. And so again, like we said last week, a big thank you to everyone for their contributions. Really appreciate the feedback and the interaction that we've had with you so far. And it's just great to hear your thoughts. So keep them coming. So Jack, let's start with the NFC North. If you want to hit me with your second highest fantasy scorers on the Bears, Lions, Packers and Vikings, please, why you've landed on them. And then I'll share my thoughts from our community notes from the TSL crew and see if they're on the same page as we go through each team.
Yeah, for sure. NFC North, it's one of the flagship divisions, isn't it? And such. And I think I don't know, has it lost a little luster this year? I think people aren't quite as high on Lions, quite as high on Vikings, quite as high on Packers and things like that. So it was intriguing to look through and maybe deep dive into their rosters a little bit more. But starting with the Bears, so I ultimately ended up with Rome Odunze, who I found it really hard. I genuinely think they've got 4 or 5 players that I could see with sort of the potential, but I think Caleb Williams, their quarterback, is going to be the top scorer. Just again, when I was sort of trying to work it out and do projections and such. So then I was working out the others and said Loveland, like we mentioned earlier, he, looks to be a real star. Swift isn't universally rated as a decent running back, but he's got the system. He's got a coach who's maximized running backs in the past. But ultimately, I think it came down to sort of Odunze and Burden with more leaving, and I just lean slightly more to the experienced Rome to come out second.
Okay, so thanks to Katie for your answer on the Bears, and again, thanks to everyone else who's got really appreciate the depth that goes beyond these answers. She said Luther Burden and Loveland stand out for me. Burden will get decent yards per reception, but Loveland is a massive red zone threat, so I will go with him. And she agreed with you. My assumptions are based on Caleb Williams being number 1 scorer.
Yeah, because it's interesting with Rome Odunze, isn't it? Like, because again, he's had plays. He's solid. He's proven himself as obviously a starting wide receiver in the league. But is he just a natural 2? Rather than having that one scope and things. And I think I'm probably backing a little bit more with more going that he's at least going to get given the opportunity to do it. But yeah, Burden's a great shout as well.
Didn't Odunze burn you last season?
He just sort of had that. He would just drop absolute mingers, just like some weeks he would just drop literally sub 5 points and all the rest of it. But at the same time, when I watch him and when I see him as a player and he's on it, I do think you see it there. But as I say, is he just a 2, a wide receiver 2 rather than being a number 1? So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, thanks for bringing up those memories. So then with the Lions up next, Jahmyr Gibbs has to be their number 1. You just have to put him as number 1, isn't he? Again, I think everyone's predicting really big things for him. He could go sort of full nuclear. And whilst they've got, Jameson Williams seems to be steadily increasing his output. Again, Laporta's had big years in the past. And I think Isaac Tesla is one. Again, I don't think he's really in for a shout to be in second scorer, but really interesting player. Some of the catches last year, he was like a highlight machine, wasn't he? It was amazing to see some of the stuff he was pulling off. But yeah, ultimately I landed on Amon-Ra, who again he's one of the best wide receivers in the league. But I think he'll come in just behind Gibbs.
So thanks to Lewis for this answer. Appreciate the depth again. So he said, I think it's pretty locked in to be Jared Goff, then Jahmyr Gibbs, then Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Okay.
In Superflex, I think Goff is a good value target every season if you're built to win now. This is dampened a bit in a 4-point passing touchdown league where rushing ability comes into consideration more heavily, but he's still one of my favourite buys in Superflex when I've seen him go for a late first so many times. He is getting up there in years, but his style of play is more likely to age better than the more dynamic options at quarterback. And he also mentioned the guy you mentioned as well, honourable mention to one of my favourite players, Jameson Williams. Once Dan Campbell took over play calling in week 9, he averaged 14 points per game in half PPR, which would have ranked him as high as number 6 on the year for wide receivers. Wow. I don't think this is entirely sustainable, and I don't think Campbell is due to continue with play calling. But between this and his big contract last year, it's clear that Campbell values him highly, and keeping him involved will likely be in any remit for their new OC.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't quite realize the stats were like that. From again, like I said, I think I highlighted he's been increasing his output and such, but I didn't realize it hit those sort of levels. So that's interesting. So yeah, maybe not as locked on. Goff's obviously a shout and such, but I think for me, again, I was thinking more of the weapons, sort of, kind of with Amon-Ra as Gibbs probably being ahead of him. So yeah, interesting. Packers next, should we do? Yeah, so I think Jacobs will be their top scorer. Again, I just feel as though he's probably the most consistent. And whilst I heard your argument for sort of Watson the other week, I still feel like the scoring's going to be quite spread out between him, Golden, Kraft. So I went for Jordan Love, who, again, I was contemplating whether or not he would be number one, but I just feel he will. He seems a sort of in that trajectory where he's going to miss a few games each year and things. Just, he's always sort of had the injury bug since he's come into the team and so. So I felt like he was the likely pick, giving him a few games off and then coming in behind Jacobs.
So Marcos stepped in for us for the Packers, and he agrees with you that Josh Jacobs as the number one. And he said, I'd like to think Tucker Kraft comes back healthy and competes as the number two. So he went with Kraft.
Yeah. I think, I mean, again, Kraft's one of those, I think he's got quite a lot of people excited, and people are like, how early do you go in on him if you drafted him and things like that? Because as I said, there was a point last year where, he was amongst the most exciting players in the league. And
How old is Kraft? Is he getting on, or is he still quite relatively young?
No, I still feel like he's only...
he's only 25.
Yeah, 25 or so, I was going to say. Yeah, again, he was only drafted 3 or 4 years ago, wasn't he? So, I think he's still got all the age profile as well.
And then do you want to wrap us up with the Vikings?
Yeah, Vikings. So I think I previously mentioned I'm expecting a big bounce back from Jefferson. So I think he's a lock for number one. And then, I feel as though, again, they've kind of got all, for me, they're all sort of flex type scorers. So you've got Aaron Jones, Hawkinson, Addison, newly signed Jennings and things. None of them really excite me as sort of big score potentials. I think they're all more sort of, rounding out your team week if it's a good matchup and things like that. So because of that, I went for Kyler Murray, who, again, he's shown in the past he can be an elite fantasy scorer at times in his career. I know there's loads of question marks about his application and the injury record and things, but I think I've mentioned before, I feel as though it could be a really good environment for him, and we might see him bounce back a little bit himself. So, I went for Jefferson number one and then Murray to be number two.
Absolutely nailed it. So from Adam, assuming Jefferson is their number 1 point scorer, then number two for the season will be between Kyler and Addison, I think. But if we're using the Sunday League rules of half PPR, I'll go with Kyler.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair shout. And as I say, he's the running threat, again, with an offense that is getting more rounded out. I think he could score pretty well.
Fair. So switching our attention over to the NFC East, where the real big boys play. We've got the Giants, Eagles, Cowboys, and Commanders. Notice how I've gone in order of where everyone finished in their division last season for every division. But around here, we start with the New York Football Giants, baby. So Jackson Dart is top dog by some distance for me. Again, as with many players, very big question mark if he can stay healthy with all those concussion issues that he had last season. Tyrone Tracy came into my thinking a little bit here, just in terms of cashing in while Cam Scatterbo and Malik Neighbours come back from injury, just dependent on how much time they miss. As I mentioned earlier, Slayton is also still injured at the moment, but he's expected back for training camp. Rookie Malachi Fields, new addition Darnell Mooney. There's a lot of talent here, but I've mentioned him already, and I have to say that I'm really intrigued and excited by Isaiah Likely, as I feel like he could be a breakout player for us. It's a hard one, and it just depends, like I say, how much time Neighbours misses, as I still feel he's the obvious choice. So I'm going to take somewhat of the safe option. I'm going to say Neighbours comes back, lights it up on his return, and he emerges as the number two scorer, but with Likely as my dark horse.
Nice. And with Neighbours, what's your gut feeling in terms of where he could potentially rank amongst the wide receivers? Like, how high is his ceiling?
I can see him just being right up there. I think the way that he played prior to the injury, I know there wasn't so much of a massive sample size with Dart, but just the all-round game, the physicality, just everything about him. I just think he's got all the attributes to be just a big scorer, top 5, top 6 wide receiver.
So up there with your Jeffersons, potentially your Chases. You think he's got that sort of talent level?
I think so. But I think you mentioned it last week on the pod that it just depends how he comes back from the injury. It's one thing coming back, but has he lost a step with the injury? Is it going to affect him long term? Can he just come back and light it up as he was before? That's the only big question mark I've probably got over him. But I just think if he does come back fully fit as he was, then I think, he's got the ability to be right up there.
Yeah, well, that's music to my ears. I'm just getting reassurance after drafting him with the fact. I just want to hear that, hear it from the inside as well. We had a couple of guys offered up their options, Marcus and Adam. Marcus had Dart number 2 behind Neighbours actually, and Adam agreed with you with sort of Neighbours behind Dart. Just both sort of highlighting, as you sort of say, that they're the clear weapons of choice, as it were. So yeah, you'd think it could be out of those two, but as you sort of say, it kind of maybe plays out with Neighbours' return. Who dictates that?
So the Philadelphia Eagles next. So it's Jalen Hurts number one again for me. I didn't realise that he finished miles ahead of the rest last season, but I think that gap closes this year. AJ Brown moving on, as has been highly touted now for several weeks. We'll see Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert put up more points, as well as rookie Mekhi Lemon. But after you put him top of the pops in your running back list the other week, I can't see anybody else but my old mate Saquon Barkley, so I've actually gone for Saquon.
Yeah, which is completely agreed with by Adam. Again, he sort of feels Hurts will be number one, still getting his tush push points, and he's sort of consistent with his high point scoring, with Barkley chasing him down in second.
Can I ask you for your opinion on Hurts, just because I think there's a bit of bias here, obviously, because he's an Eagles player, but I don't know whether it's a sort of a real life football issue that I have with him. I just don't really. I know that the whole Super Bowl win and everything, but last season in particular, there were just some big question marks there for me. But fantasy wise, do you still expect Jalen Hurts to score heavily in this coming season?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, give me him or Trevor Lawrence and stuff. I'm taking him all day. I think again, just it's been a while now. It's been 3 or 4 years that he's been a really good scorer. It's an interesting one, Hurts, because again, I watch him, and I probably because I'm newer to the sport and such, I don't quite see the disgruntlement, I suppose, that a lot of, again, the podcasts I listen to or the recap shows and things like that, where he really does obviously get a hard time for his limitations and the throws he doesn't make and things like that. Obviously, Eagles have been good pretty much since he's taken on the starter role. I don't watch their games in and out, but whenever I'm watching it, he's always sort of involved, and he gets his touchdowns obviously through the tush push, but he's also really good on his feet, and yeah, they've been a good team. So my sort of I guess awareness of the specifics to the quarterback play probably make me look on him more favorably than the experts do, because he does seem to get a fairly rough ride, in the media and from sort of, as I say, sort of experts and such. But from a fantasy point of view, again, he's right up there with the very best scorers as a quarterback.
From the Eagles to the Cowboys, what joy. So again, it's the quarterback in top spot for me with Dak Prescott. And then for me, it was a 3-horse race. George Pickens was second last season. Javonte Williams and Jake Ferguson are also heavy scorers for them. But I think we touched on this when our wide receiver rankings last week, that CeeDee Lamb is, for me, who clears them all. He returns to being Dak's favourite target, and I think he's going to score heavily over the course of the season, and he will be the second highest scorer for them.
Yeah, interesting. So Jamie Bentley, he messaged in for us. He sort of highlighted that asking for who, the second point scorer is going to be is like asking who the second man on the moon is. People might know it, but it's not what sticks. People are, like you said, and I think that's why we wanted to do this exercise, because sometimes you forget outside the elite. But yeah, he just highlighted difficulty knowing who's going to be wide receiver one between Pickens and Lamb. Ferguson in a tight end premium league like ours could really put up big numbers, but he's not convinced on Javonte Williams getting the volume. But in the end, he actually did. He went for Ferguson to make the most of the attention that the wide receivers will receive. He didn't actually say who he's going to be number one, but I'm presuming he's kind of saying wide receiver one will be number one, and then he thinks Ferguson will be number two.
Yeah, I guess that played into my answer, really, just in terms of Pickens, Lamb competing and taking receptions, yards, touchdowns off each other. So I thought Dak would sort of come through and get that top spot. But yeah, I think Lamb for me would be second, but no, fair. And then finally, the Washington Commanders. Can I just say before I give this pick that I was looking through their depth chart while we were doing this exercise, and I don't know if it's just me, but do you think they could actually struggle this season? Because I know their defense is littered with absolute animals, so they're going to be a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks. But offensively, I'm not convinced. Like Debo was their top dog last year, but he's gone. Jaden Daniels was obviously injured, and him returning is going to be massive for them, and he looks the real deal. And I guess just to sort of combine it with my answer, but also to get your take on Commanders in general, I was tempted by Scary Terry McLaurin here, and you mentioned him, Chig Okonkwo, could be a shout, but I was really struggling here because I just didn't really feel or see the quality across the offensive unit. I've gone for Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, who just shades it, but I don't know about this offense. I don't know what you think.
100% agree. Obviously, they had that really exciting year, Jaden Daniels' first year, getting into the postseason and such, and people were sort of really excited about what they did. But last year was tough, and not just because of Daniels' injury. Again, that they went out, they brought various vets in, and obviously there was the Scary Terry sort of situation with his contract, and he never reached his normal heights and things. And yeah, you do look at them now, and I know there's obviously Cliff Kingsbury's gone, isn't he? The offense, I think. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that.
Yes, I think so.
That yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying he's gone. And yeah, have they just not necessarily missed their window, but was it one step forward, two steps back type territory? And it does maybe feel like that for them. Johnny, who wrote him for the Commanders, he went for Scary Terry, which I do love because again he's when he's on it, and when he was firing a couple of years ago, he was one of my favorite players to watch. He's so exciting. And I think Jaden Daniels, Johnny highlights, is going to be the clear number one. And he just said, yeah, with a fit Terry McLaurin, he should be the clear number two. Because, like you said, the running back room, there was glimmers, but I don't know, was it ever really convincing? And again, he sort of shouted out Chig at tight end as a weapon too, and such. But I think I'd agree with him, yeah, that kind of outside of Daniels and McLaurin, I don't know, is there much elite play there? I'm not sure.
Because I feel like there was more hype than substance behind Krosky Merritt last season. I heard his name mentioned quite a
Yeah.
lot, but there wasn't like a breakout, or unless I missed it, there wasn't like major breakout games consistently from him.
No, definitely. I remember I picked him up on a waiver on one because of the sort of snowball and the hype, as it were. And there was the odd week, but I basically benched him for sort of most of the season. So again, I think there was something there, but yeah, I don't know if it was proven enough to kind of be too excited by it.
Cliff Timothy Kingsbury is the assistant head coach of the LA Rams now.
Oh,
Yeah, so
I think I might have heard that. But yeah, outside of that, like you're sort of saying, I don't know. They haven't really. I think they picked up Jerome Ford, didn't they? That's not that exciting. Luke McCaffrey had a couple big weeks last year, but again, probably isn't a consistent person. Dimey Brown, yeah, as you sort of say, that there's not a great deal. I like Marcus Mariota as a backup quarterback, but yeah, there's not a lot there to get excited about.
Okay, so it's back over to you for the NFC South. Who have you got for the Panthers, Buccaneers, Falcons, and Saints, Jack?
Yeah, not quite as exciting as the NFC North, but I think there was some interesting ones. So Bucks, that was fun, because like the Bears, I think they've got quite a lot of options, and I quite like these teams. And I think this is probably when we were thinking of the sort of, doing this. It's these sort of teams that I was intrigued by. So Mayfield was definitely in consideration. I think Irving should have a better year. But ultimately, I went for Ibuka to go as number one. I think, again, he was drafted quite high. I think it was Katie, wasn't it? I mentioned earlier that she drafted him quite high. And I really like that as a shout because, again, it's sort of what do you put the merit in? The sort of the peak or maybe the sort of the fall, as it were. And I think last year he sort of showed both. But I definitely go for the former. I think there's a real player in there. So I went for him as number one. And I went for Godwin as number two, which might be mental. And again, I probably don't know enough about the Bucks, but I just quite like him to replace sort of Mike Evans' numbers. And sort of if he stays fit, he's such a good pro. He's skill-wise, he's always been an elite sort of threat, as it were. And yeah, I was thinking about Mayfield probably seemed the obvious one because, again, he's a fairly good scoring quarterback. So I think that's probably the right decision. But I just went for Godwin. Again, I don't know if I've missed any injuries. You had a tough year last year, and obviously he's getting up in age. But I just think he might have a really good year just as that sort of senior pro. So ultimately, yeah, I went for Ibuka 1 and Godwin 2.
If you thought that was mental, wait for this. So Marcos helped us out with this one again, so I appreciate him for that. He did say tough one, but he said, I think I'll take a swing and say Chris Godwin dominates volume and becomes the number one in Evans's place.
Fair.
And then he had Emeka Egbuka continues to shine and takes the number two.
Well, actually, it makes me feel a lot better about myself because I said it was one of those, and I was like, am I being mental? But Godwin's so good. But again, I think I was more concerned about have I missed something about his injuries are going to overlap into the season or anything like that. So, No, thank you, Marcus. Makes me feel better about myself. I'm not insane. So, yeah, that's interesting. Falcons, 2-horse races in it, really. And I think Robinson, you've got to put at number 1. So it's a Drake London at number 2. Nothing too much more to report, I don't think. I think it's a fairly easy one, that one.
Marcos helped us out with this one as well. It seems his name's popping up quite a bit.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you, Marcos. So he said, yeah, Bijan number 1 and Drake London number 2. Pitts was a consideration, but I think London is just a better safety valve for Penix or even Tua if he pokes his head out.
Yeah, and I just think London's a better player. Again, I think London is on that cusp of, kind of putting his name right amongst maybe not the very top, but certainly that next tier down as wide receiver. So I definitely fancy him over Pitts. So yeah, that was fairly straightforward. Panthers, again, I found this one fairly tricky just to go for the number 2 because I think McMillan number 1, I feel as though that's fairly safe as a shout. I think again, just a really good player, really strong first year. I feel like again you've got to expect some evolution, some progression and things. So I feel like he's going to be number 1. Ultimately, I went for Hubbard at number 2, who he's not a great running back, but I think Panthers' run game showed up last year. We had some really big weeks from Dowdle, or months actually from Dowdle, and I feel as though that their actual run game, from a strategy standpoint, was really good. So I think if Hubbard is going to be the number 1, I think he'll probably come in as the second top scorer. I'm keeping an eye on Jonathan Brooks, who I sort of mentioned. Again, there's a good bit of hype a few years ago. He's obviously had awful injuries, but there seems to be positive sort of conversations or sort of news reports coming out that he is going to be back for the season. So I'm keeping my eye on that. Coker, again, solid, sort of, in your wide receiver room, but I don't know if he'll score enough. And Bryce Young maybe doesn't have quite enough as a quarterback to maybe do it. So, McMillan 1 and Hubbard 2 for me.
I was the founding member of the Rico Dowdle Hate Club last season. I ended up with Chuba Hubbard. I think I ended up in a bit of a mess really in our draft last year. I think I took him in like can't remember the 4th or 5th round because the running backs were gone. I haven't got one, so
because you've taken all the 19-year-old, 20-year-old wide receivers at that point.
Probably had something to do with it. But yeah, so for the Panthers, Rob sent a lovely message, which I hope he doesn't mind me sharing. He just said he loves the podcast so far. The group chat is a good community for relative newcomers like himself, and so that it was great to hear. So appreciate that, and thanks, and we're happy that you're enjoying everything so far. But in terms of his answer on the Panthers, he said as well that I think Tet and Bryce are 1A and 1B, so could put either in. But he also mentioned your guy. I think a good stealth option if both do well. Chuba Hubbard has a big bounce back year, could be a good buy low option. Having said that, I traded him as part of the deal to get Bucky. So hopefully both work. So I'm now officially rooting for the Panthers. Rounding it off with the New Orleans Saints, then, Jack.
Yeah, Saints. So again, quite fun to consider this as well. Obviously, especially with the Jordan Tyson edition. He definitely, I almost wanted to say him, but I think I muted after the draft. I feel like rookies, you kind of have to give them a little bit of time to sort of build into the league. So I think Olave will be the number 1. So obviously Tyler Shuck was sort of very much considered, but I think ultimately I went for them adding. I'm going to butcher this because I'm going to say Etienne, but it's A-Chain, isn't it, as well for him? Yeah. I think Travis A-Chain. I just feel as though he could score really well this year. I think he's the most proven out of the trio between him, Tyson, and Shuck. And I think with Kamara, again, Kamara's sort of given some fairly positive quotes and things, I think, about potentially coming in and, backing up A-Chain and stuff like that, which was interesting because I just thought he was probably, ready for retirement and all the rest of it. But I ultimately went for, Olave number 1 and then A-Chain to come in number 2.
You'll never guess who helped us out with the New Orleans Saints, Jack.
Well, it can't be Marcos, so no idea.
No, it is Marcos. This is his team. So.
Finally, you get the final team.
Exactly. So Olave still feels like the number 1 scorer. So for second, I very nearly wanted to say Travis Etienne, but the weapons they've put around Shuck, I have to say it will be him. I think he'll distribute passes around Olave, Tyson, Juwan, and even Etienne. And with the reworked O-line, I think we'll see more quarterback rushes. It wouldn't surprise me if they try and employ more tush-push concepts. with the
Okay.
beefed up O-line and Kellen Moore's habits from coaching in Philly.
Nice. Yeah. Again, much more insightful than me in terms of that expertise and things like that. So that's great to hear.
Okay, so over we rock to the NFC West, and let's start with the defending Super Bowl champions then, the Seattle Seahawks. So it's Jackson Smith and Jigba all day, every day as number one for me again this season. Zach Charbonnet is coming back from a serious injury. Kenneth Walker's moved on. So does rookie Jadarian Price emerge as the breakout star?
Ooh.
Cooper Kupp and Rashid Shaheed will do their bit, but I just don't think it's enough to be a big time scorer. And AJ Barner, we've mentioned, probably outscoring both of them, or at least capable of doing so. I had to play it safe here in the end, and I went for Sam Darnold, to be honest, but I'm really intrigued by the price.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, isn't it? It's going to be interesting to see what impact. Again, his first round running back. That isn't the most common thing. Again, I know we've had these guys go at the top of the drafts and things, but even going in the first round shows that there's a level of talent and things. So, Dan, my fellow Tottenham Hotspur supporter, who is in the pain zone with me at the minute, kindly just popped a quick message just saying that he feels as though it'll be Darnold behind JSN.
Good start. LA Rams, it's Puka Nakua at 1, as I think he'll just put his dramas and mistakes behind him to be a fantasy killer again. I think this is an ongoing debate, and you sort of had the brunt of it last season. Do Kyron Williams and Blake Corum continue to steal points off each other, and then neither will be in contention for this spot? Devontae Adams was an end zone superstar last season, but their fourth highest scorer overall. And then I guess, again, it's a safe bet, but if he can stay healthy for a full season and Ty Simpson sits back and chills, I think it's Matthew Stafford for me in second spot.
Yeah, he's sneaky big scorer, Stafford. Again, he obviously doesn't have the rushing play of a lot of quarterbacks, but he's one of the best sort of traditional quarterbacks in the league. So I quite like that. Our boy Marcus stepped up. Yeah, he sort of really echoed your comments in terms of the Kyron Corum sort of conundrum. But he thinks Adams will be number 2. He thinks he's still going to be feasting in that red zone. And yeah, with another year in the system of things, thinks he could come in number 2 behind Puka.
Fair. The 49ers, CMC, number 1. I think if he can avoid injuries again, then he'll continue to be a rushing scorer, but then he'll also pick up points in the receiving game as well. Brock Purdy will bounce back. Injury hit season last season. He'll score big as he's got a lot of weapons at his disposal now. But then I guess this is sort of a familiar trend that we're talking about in this topic is can Evans, Pearsall, and even rookie Stribling emerge as a top receiver by enough of a distance with Kittle out to start the season, or will they continue to take off points off each other? No more Jennings as well, of course. I don't know. Again, this feels very safe again to me because I think I've gone for a third quarterback in a row, so that probably tells you everything. But I think it's going to be Brock Purdy who gets my vote on this one.
Yeah, it's again, there's weapons there to sort of choose between, isn't it? But Adam Worrell kind of sent in a message, and yeah, he agreed. He thinks it's going to be Purdy behind CMC. He did say Kittle close third, depending on his fitness to start the year, but ultimately went for Purdy.
And then finally, the Arizona Cardinals. It was trade day every Sunday last season as Trey McBride finished top of the list. It's really intriguing behind him, as I expect him to be top again. But will Marvin Harrison Jr. bounce back? We mentioned him last week. Michael Wilson was a surprise last season, to me at least. And then there's rookie Jeremiah Love, obviously very highly touted, and everyone's expecting big things from him. But I don't know. I'm not saying he will, but will Tyler Algier sort of have something to say in his first season as Love settles into the league, the system, the team? I don't know whether that's going to have any impact on his rookie season or not, but Algier obviously going from the Falcons being number 2, arriving in Arizona thinking he may well be number 1, and then, oh, hold on, we're drafting Jeremiah Love, so no, you're not. So I think I have to go Wilson to fend off those guys as well as Jacoby Brissett, so I've gone for Wilson, but keen to get your thoughts on that Love Algier dynamic as well.
Yeah, Algier is one of those. I saw it highlighted on Twitter or whatever it's called, or somewhere where it's like, imagine you're at Falcons and then they draft Robinson, and you're like, oh, right, I'm up there. Right, I've gone Cardinals. Here we go, and then they draft. It's just like that is such a kick in the nuts, isn't it? Like you're drafted behind 2 potentially all-time sort of green jacket running backs, and he's a player man as well. Again, he still gets his yards, he still gets his plays in, and all the rest of it. But yeah, that's got to be a real kick in the teeth. But Taj wrote in, who I believe is a Cardinals fan, which was really great. So he agrees with you that McBride will be their number one. He just thinks if Love can get close to what Robinson did under the Arthur Smith offense, which was sort of 1,000 on the ground and 500 in the air, then he'll obviously have had a brilliant season. And he likes the coaching setup for him, and thinks that, even though it's his rookie year, he does feel as though he can break the 200 fantasy mark. So he gave a shout out to Marvin Harrison Jr., who, he hopes will really sort of make his mark in the league this year. But he ultimately ended up with Trey McBride number one and then Jeremiah Love as number two.
How seriously are we taking the Cardinals this season? Because when you look at those names, McBride, Love, Harrison Jr. as well, obviously, like I say, if he does have a big year, is that enough to put them in contention? Or if you're looking at the NFC West, it's dog eat dog out there. Like, have they got enough to be in the conversation?
No, again, it's tough, isn't it? Because Jacoby Brissett is a fine quarterback. He's okay, but that's still, again, you're putting him up against the other people in the league and all the rest of it, as well as the coaching staff. I know obviously they've brought in some fresh blood there and such, and they're hopeful that the coaching tree and things like that will pay off. But I still feel as though at quarterback and in the coaching room, they're still just behind talent-wise, because again, they've invested a bit in the defense and such, which again, you feel as though they've got some pieces there. And as you sort of say, on offense, it's kind of the bones are there of it there. But no, I don't really see them featuring this year as much of a threat, to be honest, just because of, as I sort of say, the competition and just in those couple of key areas, I still see them quite far behind the others.
Okay, so lastly, before we bid you farewell this week, let's have a look at some notable NFL news from the past week or so and how it might change things from a fantasy football perspective. Actually, before we get into that, Jack, we saw the international games confirmed earlier today, subsequently who will be heading to London this season. We've got the Washington Commanders taking on the Indianapolis Colts, and then the Jacksonville Jaguars will face the Philadelphia Eagles and Houston Texans. I think the big question here is which game are we going to and why is it the Patriots and Lions in Munich? But yeah, just on the international games as a whole and a concept as well, just in terms of beyond the games that we're going to talk about that are scheduled for this season. We obviously love having these games over here in London, and I think it's probably fair to say that there's a fair few fans in Washington and Jacksonville who aren't entirely thrilled about this, as other teams' fan bases have been previously. Is it good that the NFL continue to push and expand the international series? Or, with the inclusion of a game in Australia this season, there's Mexico, there's Brazil. Are they going too hard with it? How does it impact fantasy? Just your overall thoughts on the international games, I guess.
It's a really tough one because, as you say, when you've got global fan base, which NFL does, especially in a monopoly, it's not like our football where every country has their own teams and their own leagues. I appreciate there is lower level standard stuff, but ultimately the NFL is its own entity, isn't it? And such, you do want the opportunity for fans to see it. And again, unlike our football, the preseason doesn't really exist in the same way. They obviously have these sort of shared practices and they do have some warm-up games, but it's not really competitive football, is it? And it's not competitive American football and such. So it's difficult for them to be able to take it any other time than in the season. Personally, it's tricky because London has been a hub of it. So we've been really fortunate to have a season. I quite liked it when there was one game a year, and I appreciate not everyone could get to it, but it was sort of a bit of a showcase. Ultimately, and this kind of comes back, again, there's talk in the Premier League, would they ever play a game in the Premier League? And fans just, from everyone that I speak to, everyone would be just so dead against it and all the rest of it. Ultimately, what I always come back to is I want the best product on the field at all times. And the issue with this travel and all the rest of it, it doesn't just impact one game week, it impacts 2 game weeks potentially, let alone any other potential injuries that could come from it. But I don't think we've seen enough barnstorming games overseas where we're like, actually the quality isn't impacted. And yeah, for me, again, probably a little bit more of a armchair fan. I probably don't enjoy it as much. Again, 49ers Rams going to Melbourne, you think that's one of the games of the season. And the fact that they're going to the other side of the world, it's the opener. It just dampens it a little bit. And again, no offense to any Australian fans, again, you're as entitled to seeing it live as us English fans or Germans and people that get it a bit more regularly. So again, if they're going international, I probably prefer it if they did maybe 1 or 2 games and did it on a rota of, right, this year it's I don't know, the European leg, so it's England and Germany, or now it's the South American, then it's the and kind of do it that way. I think, how many are we up to now? It's like 8-9 games, isn't it? And for me, yeah, I don't know. I just feel as though the quality's always lacking. Was it last year? Was it Ravens and someone played? I think, was it Brazil or Mexico maybe at the start of last year? And like the field was just getting cut. But again, it was a fairly interesting game. But it was like the quality of it in terms of the service and things. And I don't know if I was a fan of one of those teams, certainly the Jags and things where they're traveling all the time, the occasional opportunity to travel with your team and go overseas would probably be quite exciting. But when it becomes more regular than that, I don't know. But again, I don't want to speak for them. Obviously, they're building the sport up, which is good. But yeah, personally, as I said, for me, it's all about the product of what I'm watching. When I'm tuning in on a Sunday or whatnot, and yeah, more often than not, certainly the London games and things, we haven't had too many real barnstormers, have we, or sort of really exciting games and things like that. So it's difficult. It is difficult, especially as I sort of say, because of their monopoly on it. There's only the 32 teams. There isn't the pre and post season to maybe to bring it elsewhere. There's not international, so again, it is kind of all on the NFL to sort of drive it themselves. I do understand why they do it.
Don't fear, by the way, you haven't offended anyone. We've got a couple of followers from Sweden and Japan, apparently, so no Australians, so you haven't insulted anyone. Don't worry. Yeah. But I'm just looking at this graphic actually that came out today in terms of the miles travelled for 2026, and the 49ers have topped it, obviously, like you said, with the Australia game. They are going to travel 38,105 miles projected over the course of the season. And when I know it's one end of the spectrum to the other, but the Panthers are 32nd at the bottom of the list, and they're only projected to travel 8,740.
Jeez.
So all that travel, like you say, it does sort of risk the potential of the quality of what you're seeing put out on the field. But
yeah,
I can't remember what Shanahan was asked about it not so long ago, but I think he was sort of embracing the whole thing. I don't know whether he feels like that behind the scenes, but he was just like, yeah, first game against the Rams, let's go. But
let's go. Yeah, fair. And I guess they've got to. They know there's a commercial element. I mean, everyone in the league is getting paid absolute buckets now, aren't they? And it's because of stuff like this.
Excited by the London games? Any other 3 stand out for you?
I know Eagles fans are really happy, aren't they? Which is yeah, again, fair play to them. They are well supported. I don't know, not really, to be honest with you. Colts, Commanders, like we're saying, Commanders are just a bit of an unknown, and Colts don't massively excite me. Texans could be interesting, going to get to see a potentially all-time defense could be good, but no, it's slightly the problem. I think, again, without the Jags, they've obviously, Jags are kind of like London's adopted team in a way, but I just don't know how true that actually is. And the fact that we constantly get them, I think, again, if you had I don't know, Texans 49ers or, again, Texans Seattle, I don't know, something like that, then that's quite exciting. But yeah, Colts, Commanders sort of fill in that sort of spot without the Jags probably isn't the best.
I won't be going to see the Philadelphia Eagles, so I think it's Munich for me.
Yeah, mate, that's an interesting game, isn't it? Patriots and Lions, that's sort of one. Yeah, if you swap that with the Colts and Commanders, I think you sort of, everyone's fighting for those tickets.
Okay, so elsewhere this past week, we saw the Vikings sign Jauan Jennings. Breece Hall agreed a new long-term deal with the Jets, and the Chargers snapped up David Njoku. If we start with the Vikings and Jennings, Jack, now he arrives in Minnesota off the back of a really productive and impressive stint with the 49ers. I thought it's a good move for him, and it gives Kyler Murray another target. But I guess my question for you is, what does it mean for Justin Jefferson's fantasy numbers here with another wide receiver in the room? Jennings is going to take targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns away from him. Is it really a worry for someone like Jefferson and Jefferson owners in particular, or do you not think it will be that much of a difference for him?
No, it wouldn't impact me at all in terms of my my view on Jefferson at all. But he's a genuine threat. So if anything, it might be a positive. Again, that's what wide receiver. You know, you look at Chase; he's got a legit number two. And whilst Jennings and Addison maybe aren't a top of the tree number two, that they're real threats. You know that they are people that Murray's going to have as options. So if anything, I think it could work out well for Jefferson. I think Jennings, obviously, yeah, he said he had this year. I think he was waiting for a really big contract to come in, which I don't think it quite did in the end. Obviously, the sort of interest wasn't there, but I think it's a good spot for him to showcase himself in sort of a 1 year deal, to sort of maybe try and show people that he can do it more than 1 year as a real threat. So yeah, I quite like it all round, to be honest.
Breece Hall signing his new deal didn't really excite me, if I'm honest. Obviously, it's nice for him getting that money and the certainty over his future. There was quotes from him this week sort of saying that he feels like they're building around him and the offensive unit that they've got now is actually geared up to do something. So he feels a lot more confident about the future. I think we both didn't, I can't remember if you did, but I didn't have him particularly high on my running back list for a reason when we did that. But that said, like I say, the Jets, they go into the season with an offense consisting of Geno Smith, largely considered a safe pair of hands at the quarterback position, Breece Hall with a new contract and settled and happy, Garrett Wilson, Omar Cooper Jr., AD Mitchell and Kenyon Sadiq. That as a collective does actually excite me, and for fantasy football as well, just in terms of how high their ceiling is. But what do you think of Hall, and what about the Jets as an offense, as a unit?
Yeah, definitely. It looks better on paper, doesn't it? And I think he's gone number 12 running back in the South League. I think he went, which is maybe slightly higher than I would have had him, but it's a lot of cash that they're investing in him. So you you would think that there's obviously a new idea and they're going to use it. He's a funny one because he's a player. You know, there's loads of stuff there to like. Obviously, injuries have hampered, but he's been in a, excuse my French, dog shit team for quite a while now. So again, it's quite hard to judge him. You know, he's still fairly young. I think he's only 24 or so. So he's still a really good age for a running back. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely more intrigued by him now that he's signed the contract, because I did think as though whether or not they start to phase him out a little bit. But again, with what they've given him, you think that's centerpiece money, really. So yeah, it'll be intriguing.
The introduction of the bleep machine in episode 5 of the Sunday podcast. Oh, good. And then finally, David Njoku going to the Chargers, as we mentioned. Great for him. 1 year prove it deal. Great news for Justin Herbert, Mike McDaniel getting another offensive weapon in the door. But as we mentioned, not so sure Oronde Gadsden shares their joy quite to the same level. Certainly not those who might own him already in dynasty leagues. But what do you make of that move from the Chargers? Does that sort of share things out too thinly? You've obviously got Hampton, McConkey, Quinton Johnson, others all looking to get theirs too. And I appreciate you can make that argument for pretty much every team across the league. But just Njoku and Herbert win here, or do you think it's just a very sound move from the Chargers as a whole?
I do. I like it. Yeah, I think Njoku, again, he's maybe hampered by his age slightly, but he's been productive at Browns again in a terrible team and sort of always been a bit of a shining light for them. So I like him as a player. I think he would probably go in as tight end 1 and maybe give a little bit more time for them to build Gadsden up personally. But yeah, I like it. I think he's a strong NFL player that can do you a job. And Chargers, again, their wide receiver room, there's still a few question marks over there and things. So if you get an opportunity to add another weapon, I think it's the sensible thing to do.
Any other news caught your eye this week?
Been waiting for the schedule. You were obviously pretty excited about Giants Cowboys, weren't you?
Yeah, very much so. It's a great way to start the season. Like I say, it just goes back to the same points we make, though. Just if we can get fully fit and just get Neighbours, Scatterboo, and everyone back and really attack the season with Harbaugh at the helm, I'm already very excited for that as a kickoff to the season. But just hopefully we can put a really good performance on the board first up and build on that. But yeah, it's definitely one to look forward to, isn't it?
Really exciting. Yeah, I just sort of say, I think everyone's kind of looking at Giants as an exciting team now. Cowboys always are, love them or hate them. You know, they're one to watch as a team. So yeah, great way to start the season. So that's definitely one of the key fixtures of the openers.
And then we've got the Eagles and Cowboys playing each other on Thanksgiving, I believe that was announced. So okay. I look forward to walking into a London NFL bar with my Giants jersey on. That should be
Doing your big man strat, giving it to Conor McGregor, Vince McMahon. Yeah.
That's a shout. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, good stuff. So that is a wrap on this episode of the Sunday League podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll have plenty more NFL fantasy football chat coming through the off-season. And of course, when the 2026 season gets underway. Plenty more reaction analysis next week as our North and South draft should conclude, and then the Midlands and our 2 UK-wide leagues enter the room and get started. I am competing in the Midlands, so the draft war room is prepped. It's ready. I'm channeling my inner Kevin Costner, having watched Draft Day for the 10th time yesterday. And so we are ready to rock and roll. In the meantime, please do give this episode a like or leave a positive review if you've enjoyed it. Really helps to grow the channel. Please subscribe. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And you can also follow us across all social media at Sunday League NFL. Quick reminder as well, if you're listening and you want to get involved in our community of NFL fantasy football fans in our WhatsApp group, all based in the UK, and you want to have a chat about future leagues and joining the network, please email us at sundayleaguenfl@gmail.com. Jack, any final thoughts before we sign off on this episode?
Yeah, I just want to go with a prediction on something that you've said there. My prediction is that obviously the Midlands and the 2 UK leagues are starting drafting this weekend, and you three with the North will all finish before the South do, because at the current pace, whilst I like your optimism that we'll be done by next week, we're going into June, baby. I can feel it.
I'm going to milk every minute of my 8 hours.
Yeah.
Crawl to the finish line.
Excited to see what you do, mate.
Cheers, mate. I'm nervous, if I'm honest. I'm obviously looking forward to it, but the history of doing redrafts and not having much experience in the dynasty side of things, I really, really want to get it right, especially because this is our league of record now. I'll be able to enjoy it, so I hope I kind of come out of it in a good place.
Yeah, I'm sure you will, mate. Just stick to your guns. You'll be fine.
Cheers, mate. Cheers. Thank you. Good stuff. So happy draft preparation, everyone. As always, we hope we've helped your decision making and you've enjoyed our chat. But that is it from us for now. Thank you for listening to the Sunday League UK NFL podcast, and we will catch you next week.